What is up, Player Profiler Nation? Seth Dewald here, editor at playerprofiler.com, here today to tell you 7 must-draft running backs for the 2024 season. Your drafts are coming up. We're going to talk to you today about the running backs that you need to be targeting, so let's get right into it. The first couple players that I have to mention right off the bat, and it may be obvious, but I will be brief, and then I will get to more obscure targets later on. But Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, in another year, these two players could be candidates for the 101 overall in fantasy football. In fact, some people have made the argument for these players being selected higher than they're currently going, roughly picks 7 and 8 in underdog drafts right now. Both are set up in fantastic situations in 2024, and my bold prediction is that one of these two running backs is going to be the consensus 101 this time next year. So let's dive into the advanced numbers and figure out which one of these two I believe is going to be the 101, because I'm going to make a decision at the end of this analysis. Last year, Bijan Robinson ranked number 3 in targets amongst running backs, number 19 in carries. We like this ratio from a fantasy football perspective. However, we can almost throw last year out the window because there's a new coaching staff in town. Enter Kirk Cousins, enter offensive coordinator Zack Robinson. Robinson comes from the McVay coaching tree, and Cousins is coming from Minnesota and head coach Kevin O'Connell, who's also a protege of Sean McVay. With that being said, it is apparent that both the coach and the quarterback should have a familiarity with the system. But what does this mean for the lead running back in fantasy football in that system, Bijan Robinson? If history serves us well, it bodes well for Robinson's usage in the offense, dating back to 2017 when McVay took over as the head coach of the Rams. When he had a bell cow running back, he used him. Todd Gurley ranked top 5 in opportunity share in 2017 and 2018, and ranked number 9 in that category in 2019. Last year, Kyren Williams ranked number 4 in opportunity share amongst running backs in the Rams backfield. Now, to be fair, Zack Robinson was not the offensive coordinator in 2023, but he has coached for the Rams in some capacity since 2019. So needless to say, that's where his influence is going to come from. Last season, Robinson ranked number 31 amongst running backs in opportunity share. Needless to say, that has a chance to go up dramatically. It could be top 5. It could also be number 1 in all of fantasy, in all of the NFL. If this happens, and it has a good chance of happening, barring an injury, Robinson is going to be a fantastic pick where he's currently going in drafts. But what about Breece Hall? Last season with Aaron Rodgers basically being hurt for the entire season, Hall went on to finish as the RB2 overall in total fantasy points and the RB6 in fantasy points per game. Hall scored 9 touchdowns despite ranking number 33 amongst running backs in red zone touches. And you're not going to believe this, but only one of those touches was a goal line touch. That speaks to just how bad the Jets offense was at moving the ball. In fact, the Jets ranked dead last in the NFL in red zone scoring. They converted just 32.4% of their red zone attempts into touchdowns. So even if Aaron Rodgers is an average quarterback, it would mean wonders for the Jets offense. Additionally, the Jets overhauled their lackluster offensive line in a major way this offseason. They signed offensive tackle Tyron Smith and offensive guard John Simpson in free agency. They traded for offensive tackle Morgan Moses, and the Jets drafted Olu Fashanu in the first round of the NFL draft. That is a vast improvement over last year's group, and the improvement should give Hall a chance to finish as the RB1 overall. So either running back is a must-have here. I wouldn't fault you for either selection. I think these are two of the best hero running backs like in the first round that we've seen in a while. So either running back is a must-have, especially in the middle of the first round. But the pick is going to be Breece Hall for me. Hall showed what he can do on a bad offense with a terrible quarterback last year, and that's going to be much improved this season. I mean, to a certain extent, so did Bijan Robinson, but Hall was able to prove a little bit more than Bijan did, and there isn't a running back as prominent as Tyler Algier competing with Bijan for touches. I mean, Hall only has Israel Abanikanda, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis behind him on the depth chart, and 2 of those players are rookies. So let's talk now Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne is currently being selected at pick 45, RB11 off the board. Etienne proved he could be a new age version of a bell cow in 2023. He ranked number 6 in opportunity share, number 4 in carries, and number 7 in targets amongst running backs, while ranking number 6 amongst running backs in snap share. As a result, he finished as the RB3 overall and the RB7 in fantasy points per game. The Jaguars didn't add a significant running back to take any touches away from him, although there are rumors that they want to decrease Etienne's volume. Even if this is true, Etienne is still going to see a significant volume in an offense that likes to push the pace. Jacksonville ranked number 2 in pace of play last season and number 6 in team pass plays per game last season. Last season, Etienne saw a 12.1% target share out of the backfield, which ranked number 12 amongst qualified running backs. Make no mistake about it, Etienne is going to rank amongst the top 10 running backs in targets and will likely get a 10% plus target share, even if his volume goes down. Let's talk now. Let's shift focus to Rachaad White, currently being selected at pick number 62, RB15 off the board. And to be honest, I'm not sure what's going on here. Last season, White finished the season as the RB4 in fantasy points scored and the RB10 in fantasy points per game. And to be fair, the case for White is volume, which he should get plenty of once again in 2024. It's true. Dave Canales is gone, but new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen has a history with the Rams, who have shown the propensity to feature one running back. And the Buccaneers currently have newly drafted Bucky Irvin, drafted in the 4th round of the 2024 NFL Draft, Chase Edmonds, and Sean Tucker behind White on the depth chart. No running back on the Buccaneers roster significantly challenged White for playing time last season, and the Buccaneers, as I mentioned, haven't really done much to add to the room to challenge White in 2024. However, let's just say White sees a 20% reduction in volume across the board from what he did last year. This would result in him getting 218 carries, 785 yards, rushing yards, 56 targets, 51 receptions. He catches a lot of his targets. Just go look at his catch rate. This would result in 377 yards and 7 touchdowns. And if that season were to happen, which is highly unlikely, this is the ultimate floor projection for Rachaad White, he would score 209.2 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and that would have made him the RB17 in 2023. He's currently being drafted as the RB15 this year. So even, like I said, even in that unlikely scenario, he's still going to produce, and you're probably going to lose the ADP bet if that happens. But there's a high floor and a high ceiling for White, and he can absolutely be your hero running back in fantasy football drafts. I am very intrigued by James Cook this season. He's currently going off the board, pick 58, RB13 overall. He's coming off a season where he finishes the RB12 and the RB19 in fantasy points per game. The problem is his upside is going to be limited to a certain extent because Josh Allen likes to run the ball and doesn't necessarily target his running backs a ton as a result. However, that doesn't mean that James Cook shouldn't be in line for a ton of volume in 2024. It means he should be in line for a ton of volume in 2024. The reason I believe the Bills are going to use James Cook more is because they lost Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs, and those two receivers accounted for 241 targets in the offense. The Bills are trying to replace them with Keon Coleman, who they drafted, and Curtis Samuel, who they signed in free agency, but I highly doubt those two receivers alone will account for all of the vacated targets in the Bills offense. This is where James Cook's role could grow in 2024 as a weapon out of the backfield. And there is room for growth this season, to be sure, because last year he ranked number 23 in snap share, number 18 in opportunity share, and number 10 in weighted opportunities amongst running backs last season. Additionally, Cook ranked number 19 in targets, number 22 in red zone touches, and number 24 in touchdowns amongst running backs. The Bills also lost Latavius Murray, who was their second leading rusher other than Josh Allen, and they replaced him with a rookie, Ray Davis, in round 4 of the NFL draft. But the Bills depth chart features clearly at the top James Cook, followed by Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, Darrington Evans, Frank Gore Jr. behind them, respectively. So it would not shock me if Cook's role actually increases this year and evolves in the post-Stephon Diggs era. Additionally, Josh Allen scored 15 rushing touchdowns last year. I don't see that happening again, and as a result, you would think that James Cook should get a lot more lucky with the touchdowns. Last season was the worst statistical season of DeAndre Swift's career, at least from a fantasy perspective. I know rushing totals were high, but we don't necessarily care about that in fantasy. Weirdly, it was the first season in which Swift played 16 games or more, and Swift ranked as the RB20 overall and the RB24 in fantasy points per game. Additionally, he recorded career lows in receptions, receiving yards, and total touchdowns. Swift's 2023 season may be the poster boy for why we don't care as much about carries as we do targets. So now Swift moves to another good, albeit crowded, situation in Chicago. But how do we know Swift's 2024 season with the Bears is going to be better than his 2023 season with the Eagles? I mean, for starters, Swift is by all accounts the main guy in Chicago. Sure, Roschon Johnson is there, and so is Khalil Herbert, but these are day 3 running backs that don't necessarily possess the upside that Swift brings as a playmaker and as a pass catcher. However, the argument against Swift is most certainly going to be, A, this is a crowded offense, and B, what if Caleb Williams is bad in year 1? I'll admit it's hard to project rookie quarterbacks going forward, but I'm not as worried about Caleb Williams, and I'll tell you why. This is because he's an ultra talented player and he's entering a situation with an unbelievable supporting cast. The Bears also have an under the radar offensive line that they have steadily added to in the years leading up to the Bears selecting Williams. This includes Darnell Wright in round 1 of the 2023 NFL draft, who is the starting right tackle. No matter how good the supporting cast might be, however, there is a realistic chance that Williams struggles at times in 2024. We need to bake that into what Swift's projections might be. After all, the recent history of number 1 overall picks succeeding in year 1 isn't great. Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow all struggled in their first season as a starter. However, Kyler Murray performed admirably in year 1, and I would say Williams has the best setup out of all of them. So we're going to assume that Williams is an average NFL quarterback for this projection. And even if we assume that he's just average, Swift should definitely outproduce his ADP. If he gets an average volume from what he's seen in the past, I have him as the RB18, and he's currently being drafted as the RB26. And that's with a very modest projection. So I am very bullish on DeAndre Swift in 2024. Let's shift gears to Jaylen Warren. I realize that Warren is in a time split with Najee Harris, and it could be that the coaching staff in Pittsburgh wants Harris to succeed. The problem is that Jaylen Warren is the better running back. Jaylen Warren ranked number 6 in target share, number 6 in true yards per carry, number 7 in yards per touch, number 1 in juke rate, and number 3 in breakaway run rate amongst running backs in 2023. Harris ranked number 33 in target share, number 36 in true yards per carry, number 39 in yards created per touch, and number 22 in juke rate, number 10 in breakaway run rate. In every category that we care about for fantasy football, Jaylen Warren was better. The only thing that can get in the way of Warren succeeding is the Pittsburgh coaching staff. They may just want to use Najee Harris, especially in the red zone, and Harris did rank number 8 amongst running backs in red zone touches last season, and I would expect that trend to continue in 2024. However, that doesn't take away the fact that Warren is the better pass catcher out of the backfield. And the good news, if you like Jaylen Warren like I do, is that the Broncos with Russell Wilson targeted their running backs a fair amount. There were 150 total targets to running backs in the Broncos system last year. Now, granted, the Steelers quarterback, Russell Wilson, did miss 2 games at the end of last season, but it's fair to say that the Steelers running backs should be getting a good number of targets out of the backfield, and Warren is the most qualified running back to earn a good majority of them. So even if we assume a 50-50 split, even if we assume that Warren gets about the same amount of targets as he did last year, there's a slight bump in targets, but he gets about 60 to 65% of them, which is what he got about last year. I have him projected to be the RB17 overall. This is where he's currently being drafted is RB25, so it's a good discrepancy there. The problem with Jaylen Warren is that his upside is going to be capped because of Najee Harris, but still, he's a great pick, especially if he's your RB2. Let's talk about Zach Moss now. He's an interesting case. He's currently being selected at pick 94, RB27 off the board. And it's interesting because the Bengals are now in the post-Joe Mixon era. And in his time with the Bengals, Mixon thrived on volume. Over the last 3 seasons, Mixon averaged 253 carries, 62 targets, and 12 total touchdowns. That's absolutely insane volume. And Mixon has been a steady top 12 running back as a result. So enter Zach Moss into this situation. Moss projects to be the primary running back in Cincinnati, with Chase Brown serving as a pass-catching threat as well. So this is likely going to be more of a committee, I would assume. But honestly, Moss is the better running back with more experience in the NFL. He should be the running back that earns the lion's share of the opportunities, even if he gets 70 to 80% of the workload that Mixon received during his time in Cincinnati. Moss would be well worth the ADP. And currently, there's a wide range of projections that I have for Zach Moss, which include anywhere from him finishing as the RB33. And in the best case scenario, I have him finishing as the RB11, which is probably not going to happen because that assumes he's going to take over that Joe Mixon workload. And like I said, that's very unrealistic, but it could happen if Chase Brown just proves to be a bad football player. But I would say that with a 60 to 70% of what Joe Mixon would have got workload, this is going to be a pick that's well worth the ADP where he's currently going. And like I said, there's the upside case for Zach Moss is just he gets a ton of volume, and he could far exceed my touchdown projection as well. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.